I like that, actually. A nice preamble. You're not early, you're late, everybody. Not really, actually. We're only joking. We're just seeing you live on YouTube in about 10 seconds. And as soon as we go live, we'll start
You're
our
not
interview.
early, you're late.
I like that. I like that. And there we have it. We are live on YouTube. So everybody, welcome once again to the Empower Hour show with myself, Sukhi Wahiwala, entrepreneur and these days presenter and influencer. What I'd like to share with you is today we've got an individual who I think you're going to be really intrigued in his journey and in his real life about him as an individual. This is episode 57. Yes, I can't actually believe it myself either. It's episode 57, folks. And this is a weekly show. So that's a pretty good long stint so far. And I thank you very much for receiving me. And I want to advise everybody and thank Salam Radio for making all this happen. This is a sponsored show by Salam Radio. And when we go live back on air, as soon as our current COVID-19 crisis with God's gratitude goes back to being a normal procedure and program. Well, without further ado, I would like to introduce the Empower Hours show. The Empower Hours show is a show where myself, Sukhi Wahiwala, I delve and I bring to you celebrities, individuals who are achieved, thought leaders, business individuals, and people who are just absolutely unsung heroes on this planet. Individuals who have had maybe a challenge, but have overcome it with a real significant benefit to the world. Individuals who are selfless in their journey, and we want to show our next generation how powerful, how important it is to be relentless in your journey of life with a clear focus of where one is going. This evening, I'm not going to let you down in any way. We have Premz Raja, aka also known as Premz, which is the UK Asian rapper. He is an individual who's an individual who was voted for an award in 2019 for Brit Asia. He's an individual who's been followed up by BBC, Asian Network and BBC, and has been formidably seen. He is a lyricist, a writer, an individual who has been involved in poetry from a very young age, a person who understands language very well, but he is a UK rapper, somebody who creates music, and he's recently shot to fame with his current release, which I'll talk about, Brown People, and we've got a great conversation coming up with him. But he's actually an individual who has another side of his life as well, a side of life where he is actually what we call, he works with hedge funds. He is a currency risk analyst. Interesting, isn't it? So it's quite a diverse flow. Welcome, 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 Premz. Welcome to the show.
Sukhi, thank you for having me. Thank you very much for having me. How are you?
Very, very well. Do you know what? This is going to be a power pack show as always. There's sides to you, young man, that the world doesn't really understand and know. And I think I qualified myself to be able to call you young man, because I realized in hindsight, this is a little laugh and a joke of what we had before we first started, is that I first of all called his dad uncle, and then realized he was only a few years older than me. And I thought, I better not do that. So my apologies. My apologies, Himanshu Bhai. I'm very, very sorry about that. If you're watching this tonight, you're a brother of mine, and he's the nephew, just thought I'd let you know. And if anybody else is watching us and tuning in from all over the world, well, welcome to you as well from all walks of time walks, where we're talking about with South Pacific, Asia, North Asia, Africa's, Americas, Europe. I have a following with God's gratitude from all over the place, and thank you very much for being a what we call an avid follower of our programs. You know how the program goes. Premz, I'm sorry, but I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit. But just a few questions. Where are you from, young man?
So I'm from Southeast London, Greenwich. Born and raised.
Right, so just south of Canary Wharf and stuff. That's not just the south.
Yeah, exactly that. The side of the O2, basically, for people that don't know it. So where the O2 is, and close to Blue Water and things like that. So yeah, that's where I'm from, born and raised around here.
Oh, wonderful. So a proper East Londoner, right? Or Southeast Londoner, right?
Southeast Londoner, yeah.
I had a very close friend of mine. We were just talking only about a few hours ago on a business boardroom. It's a mastermind program that I run. And he's an Essex lad as well. And he basically is very proud of that. And I'm sure you are as well. Definitely. So just a question. You were born in Southeast London. You're a British-born individual. And who else is in the family? Please let me know.
So mum and dad, and I have one younger brother and one younger sister.
So 3 of you in total, and you being the eldest, are always one that's got to be looked up at, right?
Yeah. So I'm the eldest of the 3.
Don't tell me you've got the same problems everybody else. It's like occasionally you have to assert your what you call it, age difference, because Asian families are very hierarchical, and sometimes you get told what to do, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's like it's a mix of both. You find it depends who you're dealing with at the time.
Very much so. So there's a few sides of yourself. I mean, you have shot to some current fame and before as well, with reference to your amazing release called Brown People. Now, I'll delve into that a little bit later in the second half of this interview if I can, but it touches on some really deep topics. This inspires us to understand that, you know, there's a depth of your character which possibly the world doesn't really know. I mean, how did music start in your life?
Music started in my life very, very young. I was brought up around, well, watching Indian film in the cinema. For people that are raised around this area, the Safari Cinema in East London that everyone usually go to.
I'm sorry, I'm going to catch you there, but I just noticed something very interesting there. You said Indian movies and Indian cinema. Now, the modern life today tends to call it Bollywood, doesn't it?
Yeah,
but
that's right.
I grew up in an era, much same as yourself, where it was Indian movies or Hindi movies, right?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. That's all we called it. I'm not sure when the Bollywood thing started. I know it's always been called Bollywood, but yeah, I don't know when that started, when everyone would just refer to it as Bollywood. Maybe it's a Netflix category. Maybe that's why.
A little plug to Netflix if you're watching.
Exactly. Yeah, throw Sukhi a check. So yeah, being brought around that, my dad especially was an avid music listener, especially of Hindi music. So a lot of old Kishore Kumar, Mukesh, that sort of thing. So I actually ended up, probably by the time I was 10, 11 years old, seeing most of the Hindi playback singers when they came to the UK, like Wembley Arena and things like that.
I mean, that's something special. That's something special to be able to have seen them involved in radio.
Yeah, especially when you realise they don't really come here these days. So maybe there was more of a demand for it back then. But yeah, I've been quite lucky to have witnessed all of that. And to be honest, those singers, in my opinion, are of a different caliber to
Agreed.
You have these days. That they sounded exactly the same live as they do when you listen to them, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, fortunately I was able to watch all of that. So I always had a strong admiration for not just music as a whole, but the way Hindi music was put together, because it was all live instrumentation. It wasn't synthesized, it wasn't computers. And again, the way their voices just sounded exactly the same. They didn't need an effect. They didn't need auto-tune or vocoder or anything like that. They sounded how they are.
There's something I just want to touch base on something there, just in case people don't understand that Hindi cinema or Indian cinema, that some of the names that he's mentioned, for example, Muhammad Rafi, Kishore Kumar and Mukesh. I mean, Muhammad Rafi is in the Guinness World Book of Records for over 40,000 playback songs recorded, and that's only the ones that were recorded and put into public arena. That is an immense body of work. So this is you know, this Indian cinema is the largest movie industry on the planet, not by capita, by money. And by the way, you're going to learn a little bit about this young man standing here in front of us. He knows a little bit about money and currency, but it's basically the films. There's over 300 movies per year delivered.
And I think my son also was in the Guinness Book of Records for most playback songs recorded in a day. That may have been beaten by now, but
who was that? Sorry,
Kumar Sanu.
Kumar Sanu, that's right. Yes.
Yeah, I remember he made the records as well for, I think it was most songs recorded in a day, if I remember correctly.
Modern technology being his supporter, because it could do so much more in such little time. I love it. Yeah. So a little journey. I mean, I want to touch base a little bit with your dad, if you don't mind. I mean, I know him obviously by you sharing his name, Himanshu Raja. So I am telling you, I have heard of his name, and I'm very, very adamant that I have. And I'm going to tell you, I'm sure after this interview, when I specifically know him from which particular era. But tell me a little bit about what used to happen in your household. I mean, music is a wonderful thing, right?
Yeah, so my dad's always been, like I said, he's always been an avid music listener, and he'd always be singing around the house. And then, yeah, over the last maybe 10 years now, he's been singing. So he is a singer himself. So it's not just myself that does sort of music in the household. So yeah, he does it as well. Mainly sort of old school Kishore Kumar records, that sort of era.
Just to
But yeah,
clarify, for the non Asian speaking, Kishore Kumar is also another playback singer,
yeah,
who's world renowned. You know, this gentleman is a legend. Yes,
yeah.
please carry on.
So yeah, he mainly sings songs from that era, essentially, and mainly by that singer. So yeah, that's probably where my music gene comes from. in all honesty, growing up around that.
I can respect that truly, truly. Now, a question to yourself, and there was a time and a period in your life. I mean, you went to school, you were influenced by your father, mum, for example. If you don't mind, just tell me a little bit about how your household was, if you don't mind. You know, work ethics, and
Yeah.
what did they do when you grew up?
So my mum and dad both immigrated here from East Africa. My dad came from Kenya. My mum came from Uganda through the Idi Amin regime.
Yeah. Very
so yeah, so I've seen them really sort of make something from nothing. And I've always said that, yes, I'm a religious man and I believe in God, but I've always believed that my parents are my God. So if my parents say it, then that's my religion. I'll go with that.
I have to apologize, but that is so beautiful. That is the way all faiths believe, that God's presence is in the feet of your parents. And obviously, this is not to suggest that when parents aren't those role models in life, that other people don't become those parent role models. So it's either or. I love it. Thank you.
Yeah. So I was able, I watched them, work really, really hard. So my dad was in the motor spares business first. He would be there during the day. So after school, sort of my mum would pick us up, look after us, feed us, water us. My dad would come home from work, and then my mum would leave to do her night shift, either at the bread factory, and she worked in the supermarket as well, doing night shifts. But it was crazy.
Yeah, you mustn't forget something. I mean, that I can see that was an amazing, beautifully yin and yang flow of. It's kind of like passing the baton on from parent to parent to keep that you guys stable in your life's thinking. But the second that I just want to make a statement here, if I may, this is kind of like to all mums. I think people misinterpret the fact that being a mum or a mother figure, or a grandma, nanny, or whatever you want to call it, a daddy, that actually that's a full-time job. And so being able to do that as a full-time job, and then to do, as you suggested, working in a factory, as in a bakery, as well as a supermarket, that's 3 jobs.
Yeah.
That is grit. That is relentlessness within itself.
Yeah, and you grow up seeing that sort of work ethic and that sort of dedication, because think about it, it was just to put food on the table for us and keep the lights on for us, right? And I can't say we ever went without or anything. I wouldn't have known what their situation was. We never saw anything bad. So yeah, that was our family life. Obviously, it was me and my brother, and then my sister came along when I was 9 years old. So yeah, fortunately, the 5 of us, we have, touch wood, real close-knit relationship, which is nice. I believe family is a really important thing. So yeah, to be honest, that was where a lot of my influences came from. Life is always, eat together, go to the cinema, watch films together, or get the video from the video shop down the road and things like that. So I'm a very family orientated person, and that's where it comes from.
Just double checking, you haven't got YouTube open in the background, have you, by any chance? Because I've got a bit of a reverb occasionally. If it's not, that's fine. Just wanted to double check with yourself, Premz. Okay, so just moving forward a little bit now. I know a little bit more about the side of yourself after our pre-conversation, that there was, we call this a defining moment in your life, something that really shifted and changed the way your trajectory went forward. But before we get to that particular point, there's a question I want to ask you. Is that when did you realize, because anybody who's listened to brown people as an artist, you obviously are a very talented rapper, and the music composition is very, very brilliant as well. But it's the lyrics that really, really touch people. you know, that conversation that you're having with people, and the significance of a particular time when you went to India. Now, even there, it sounds a bit odd saying something like when you went back home, because home is here, right? It's maybe your parents' home also is Africa, and maybe their parent home is Africa as well, but their great grandparents' home would be India, in Gujarat or somewhere like that. So what inspired that journey to kind of look into your heritage and shine the torch a little bit? And then the second part of it would be, what did you find and what happened within you?
Yeah, so you actually touched on a good point there, in the sense that we have no family in India. Any of our overseas family are in East Africa. So yeah, like you said, you know, being great grandparents that would have been in India. So when we went to India, we went as tourists. You know, we didn't stay around. We didn't have houses to stay at. You know, we were staying in hotels and doing the tourist thing and going to see all of the temples. And you know, we were there for quite a long time, so we traveled all around. And it's crazy because as I say that, though, you felt this connection to not just the land, but everybody within the land. And I know that especially like my parents feel it too, and my dad's been numerous times. And it was that sort of feeling that I don't know how to describe it, and maybe it's something that it's just a feeling a feeling of belonging.
I get it
there, as
like
opposed to as opposed to what you feel elsewhere. And don't get me wrong, I went there as arrogant, egotistical teenager who was like, is that what the toilet looks like? And that, you know, that sort of attitude to it. But
thank you for being honest as well.
But what you can't deny, what I couldn't deny really, was, like I said, that sense of belonging, that, you know, sort of here, and actually, this actually feels like your natural space and naturally where you should be. And to be honest, ever since then, really my plan has always been to look at ways, and when I say invest, I don't mean strictly financially, I mean structurally and emotionally, just investing in our heritage and back home, and building what we can from there to here.
So is that kind of like, do you get this sort of like the sense of belonging in both places? Because England is our home. It's
for sure.
Right? No, we're British, but this belonging of wanting to help the people over there in that kind of investment, or is it an investment in bringing the light to a heritage that's been kind of like hidden by, I suppose you could say, is the imperialism and Western culture in essence at that time, you know, that kind of thing? What parts of it does you?
I would say both. So to touch on your last point about sort of shining light on our heritage, it is exactly that. And I was saying this to somebody the other day. I'm from an era where not all of my friends would admit that they watched Indian films with their parents because they didn't want to look too Asian or things
wasn't
like
cool.
Yeah. But now, of course, we're in a different time where, you know, people, you know, you go on Netflix and I know people of all races that have watched Kabhi Khushi Kabhie Gham and those sort of classic films that we have, right? And it's exactly that feeling of pride that, you know what, that's one of our films. You know, we all, you know, many of us watched Money Heist, it's a Spanish show, but we all watched it. It was a very popular show on Netflix, and there's been loads of cases like that. And it's shining light in that sense. And then the other sense as well is realizing that, you know, what we have here and what we have there, in the sense of, you know, differences and sort of where the wealth is scattered and the situations that people are in, is knowing that, okay, there's a lot of places that can use our help as well in many different fashions, you know, whether it be orphanages or things like that. And just having that realization that actually, you know, there's more that we can do, you know, as opposed to just on our doorstep.
So that's such a key point, because obviously we're talking about an era where I suppose you could say Indianness is kind of like, it's cool, it's hip. I mean, that harks back to the tail end of the 90s when people like Madonna used to turn up with a bindi, you know, a bindi being the bindi in the middle of in her music videos and stuff. So it became kind of cool quite quickly, and then there was couple of raps, and I know it touches around that sort of time frame, 2001, when it became quite evident for yourself, where where certain, and it's not coming to mind right now, but certain raps actually used Lata Mangeshkar, which is another classic female singer, again in the World Book of Records as well. And she sang, and certain extracts of her music were used in modern rap. Now, that diversity, richness in the culture, obviously is evident, and it was having an effect upon you at that time. You felt a belonging. I mean, when did you realize that you had like a touch for poetry or lyrics? Because a rapper is a rapper, but what really makes the rap powerful is when the actual individual, the artist, actually writes their own lyrics. And that's key. So you are one of those write your own lyrics individual, and we're going to touch in the second half with all the actual lyrics as well for brown people. But we'll just, if I can ask you, when did you sort of realize, what was the journey there? Because there has to be some kind of a lyrical awakening.
So poetry, I started like really young, like 7, 8 years old.
Wow.
And I don't know why. I think it was just something that was encouraged upon in school. And there was a competition back then, and whoever won the competition effectively would be published in a book. And actually won that competition. So one of my poems actually got published in a book many, many years ago. And I guess that sort of reinforced any belief I may have had that, I could actually be good at this. And it's just something that sort of developed over the years. As I got introduced to rap music, I then realized that, this is probably a good way to mix, writing what I'm writing and putting it into music, because I was a music fanatic anyway. But I can't sing to save my life. So R&B wasn't going to be the way for me.
That's good.
So fortunately I found rap. And then, I just started experimenting with that. And, we used to record music with those little MP3 players that had microphones in them. So I used to literally record vocals. Yeah, I used to record a vocal in that, put it into my sort of Windows 98 computer, put the backing track under it, and that would be my version of a song, believe it or not.
Hang on a second. I've just got to stop this a second. You actually did this? You actually turned around, and when you were younger, you would actually, in essence, lay a track down, in essence, right? You're putting music to your lyrics, and then you'd put it upon your MP3 Sony, because in those days, I can remember it used to be those Bluetooth units you could hook up, and everybody could basically share together, right?
Yeah, that's exactly how we did it. Yeah, that's exactly how we did it.
You were a young celeb.
Yeah, well, yeah, it was kind of like that in the area, because obviously it's a small place when you're a kid, right? So you have people approaching you saying, like, I've got your song on my phone, and it's like it's not good for your ego. Not good for your ego. You become this little celebrity in your little town, right? So that's eventually how I started, and then progressed to a £10 microphone I bought from Argos. Used to record songs when my mum and dad were at the house. And then eventually actually found a proper studio when I was like 14, 15 years old.
Even that's quite young. I have to admit, even that's quite young. So you were producing product quite long. So this is not a new journey. You're talking 15 years of your life you've been producing products, right?
Yeah, a very long time. And I've always been in love with the process of it. And I've always taken a lot of interest in not just the element I'm involved in, as in like the writing and the recording, but how the mixing happens and how your voice will sound if you do something to it, and how you make that full product effectively. And obviously I've seen technology develop a lot as well over the years, from especially doing it with like this fuzzy microphone. Believe it or not, that song actually got played on radio back then as well. Yeah, that was the crazy part. My friend knew somebody at I've forgotten the radio station. My friend knew somebody at a radio station anyway, and she played it for a whole week, and that was crazy.
That would have done great for your cred.
Yeah, and it was like, and it's like I'm in school, I'm going to my friends' houses, and their dads are going, "Oh wow, I heard you on radio last night." This is crazy. Like, this is weird. This isn't what a 13-year-old's supposed to do. Like, it just felt really, really odd. But it was really cool. It was good. It was good for the profile.
So as influence goes, now I know great artists like yourselves, and obviously world artists like Tiny Temper. These they were quite close to your arena, weren't they? They were very close to you in the location. Is that right? So tell us a little bit about stories. You know, how did you grow up with that?
Yeah, so Tiny Temper is a local artist from Plumstead, which is just down the road. So Tiny was a celebrity really when I was sort of coming up. And actually, the first time I ever performed live when I was 15 years old was just after Tiny Temper on the same night. So we have a mutual
the same
friend.
stage.
Yeah, which we shared a stage when I was 15 years old. Because we have a mutual friend and this is when Tiny was on the come up and he was really about to go somewhere. And then obviously after that, let's say he never looked back. He's a global superstar now. But having that in the area made it real. Like you can actually do this. Like it became a reality. Yeah, because it wasn't. You know, when you're rapping with your friends, you're doing it between you and your friends. You know, it's just product that you're giving to your friend. You're not selling it. I did start selling CDs later on. You know, we'd go to streets of London and Kingston and these places and literally sell CDs to people. But before that, it was more just you know, between our friend circles, you know, I made some music, it's all for fun. But then when he did that, it's like, wow, you know, you could really do something with this.
Yeah, this is possible. This is real.
Yeah.
That leads me to a section which we talk about, which is called the defining moment in your life. So if I ask you something, anything significant? I mean, we've covered a lot of significance already. I mean, what significant moment in your world that you want to share with our audience, our inspired tribe today, that really kind of changed the trajectory of your life in essence?
So for me, that moment is when I decided to drop out of university.
Okay.
Okay. So when I was 18, I began studying law. And before that, I thought that was what I wanted to do. I even got a good work experience at Sherry Blair's chambers. So I managed to do everything right. Like, you know, I studied how to do it. I'd done everything right. And then I sort of got to university and I just thought, I don't know, I felt this deep sense of uncomfortableness with the whole thing throughout that whole year. Like I really tried, but I just couldn't help but feel that, you know, something's not right for you.
Yeah, it wasn't authentic.
Yeah. And I'm one of those people that I can do something and I can achieve something if I want it. And if I know I want it more than the next person, I know I'll get it. When I'm sitting in a room with 150 people in one university, when there's hundreds, and we're all going to be going for the same pupillage to be a barrister or whatever it may be, I thought, I don't want it as much as they do. So how am I going to get it? Like, it doesn't make sense. And it was that sort of realization that maybe this isn't for me. And it was taking that decision.
So just to clarify for everybody who is listening, and I know we've got such a young following of generational individuals, this is not about what Premz is not saying to us here, do not study, do not go further into study.
Oh, no.
It's very clear that it doesn't suit his journey in his life. And I'm going to ask a question if I can. You know, when you decided to drop out, how sort of like, because obviously this is about being real and honest with everybody. How was that when you came home? Because obviously you checked inwards. You looked inwards and said that you've been already what we classify as a person who's very aligned with oneself, because anybody who writes lyrics, poems, poetry, they really have this sense of togetherness with oneself. Okay. So that was very evident. And I'm assuming that was part of the benefits of you being able to research and kind of reflect and connect with the fact that you didn't want to take this journey. Now, what happened thereafter when you came back and shared it with the family, in essence?
So the family were okay, but of course everybody has their reservations because it seems like you had this plan all along and now you're going to deviate from that plan. And anybody that cares for you is going to think, oh, are you sure you don't want to carry on with this safer plan? Because it is safer, right? You're going to go, you're going to study, you'll get your degree and you'll have something to land on. And effectively, I was saying, I don't want that safety net. There was a little bit of pushback from people, you know, how people are, you know, everybody has their opinion on it, which is fine. But I decided just to stick to my guns on it. And I had an interest in other areas. And I just wanted to pursue those things instead. And to be honest, all I said to myself is that I'll give myself these 18 months. If it doesn't work, I'll go back to university. And that was sort of the deal I cut with everybody.
Now, wow, that's a different one. Now, here's one thing that I just want to share and just reframe if I can. The difference there is not just about taking a journey coming away from somewhere, but it's actually putting a plan in place and an end goal. So you set yourself, if I can ask a question again, you're going to leave university. And what you said, it's going to take me 18 months or so, or 2 years to achieve what I wanted to do with reference to the degree in law. Where would you have been financially, for argument's sake? And I suppose the question that you're asking yourself is, what else could I do to get to that position and further in the same time frame? Wow, that is brilliant. That's a very, very lovely way to see life in a positive attitude. So what was your next journey then? Because I also, Dicky Birds told me that you have a very, very articulate mind for funds and analytics and stuff. So, you know, with reference to online currency. So please let us know a little bit of journey, what happened there and where you work.
So how I got into currency is a funny story. So quite soon after I'd sort of come out of university, I had my couple of months of not knowing what I'm doing and figuring out the plan. I started working in the post room of a stockbroking firm. That was my way in. I was opening letters for a living for
ego out the window. You know, just protecting yourself and saying, I've got to start somewhere. That's the message. I understand this.
Managed to work my way up through that firm, made it to the trading floor. I was now officially a stockbroker.
Wow.
So I got where I wanted to go. At the same time, the stock market and stockbroking was no longer a thing. You know, everyone buys their stocks online through like a Hargreaves Lansdowne, or we have apps, or we use our banks. You know, we don't ring the broker. It's not Wall Street, Gordon Gekko anymore. That doesn't exist. So I got approached by a friend, like an old sort of family friend, who was opening a company in foreign exchange broking. And yet, funny thing is, he actually offered me the job when I was 17, but I said, oh, I've still got to do my A-levels, so sorry, I can't do it. And he said, look, you know, we're starting here. This was in his garage at home. And just said, you know, why don't you come on board with us? So, you know, I'm in this big flashy firm, Sukhi, like everything. It was literally like watching The Wolf of Wall Street. That's where I worked.
Wow.
And I went to, you know, he had a great house, but I went to his house, went to his garage, him, his brothers, his sister-in-law. And he goes, this is the company. Fell in love with it, never went back to my other job, handed in my notice, and then I started my career there. And effectively, we've built that company over the last decade, really.
Sorry to pause you there a second, but unapologetically, I just want to point something out here. You were actually a stock trader, so income wasn't the challenge anymore. You had achieved, you'd gone somewhere. So then you decided to shift from there into a home startup, in essence, right?
Yeah.
So what was it that made you fall in love with that then, please, Premz?
It was so the thing about stockbroking is it was a very emotionless job. In the sense of it's buy and sell. You're not even, there's not really any emotional attachment to your clients, to be honest. It was a very, hey, how much is this stock going for? You look at the price, you add $20 onto it, that's how much it's going for. You sell it, that was it. There wasn't really no relationship to it. I'm a relationship guy. This industry was very much, you know, cultivate. It was self-employment effectively. It was cultivate your own client base, pick what sectors you want to go into, learn the currency market as much as you want. So I've done, the funny thing is that, yes, I never went to university, but I've constantly studied now for the rest of my life and gained certifications in the financial markets instead, because that's where I found that actually was more of my calling.
Clearly, study is necessary. That was a
100%. Knowledge is power, as they say. So once you find that subject or something that you know think that, yeah, I am interested in this, 100% study it, learn everything there is to know about it, and then you can make a judgment call. Until we've learned and know what it is, we can't judge anything and turn our nose up at anything. So yeah, that's effectively how I got into the currency game, and yeah, I haven't really looked back since. That was the thing that I fell in love with in the end.
It's a perfect time to, I told you the time will run really quickly, Premz. We are halfway through already. So already halfway through the interview. That's how fast it disappears. So if anyone's just joined us on the Empower Hour show with myself, Sukhi, Wahiwala. We have Premz, who is a UK rapper and a really up-and-coming rapper, brilliant lyricist, and an individual who's so passionate about his journey. Please do rewind back to the start just to get a feel of his background and his humble beginnings and his journey up until now of realization with poetry and moving into a stockbroking environment, as well as still wanting that passion for music, etc. Premz, just back to ourselves. Now, what actually really interests me in your current track, the current track that's just been moved into the market, can you tell us a little bit more about the lyrics and how they came about? Because there's a specific line which really resonated with myself, and we touched on it in the first half, but I'd like to go back to in a bit more depth, where you spoke about going back and getting connected, and you only ever inspired yourself to look at your heritage, your kind of, in essence, your belonging. And what that was translated in language and lyrics. And I'd love you to, if you can, share some of the lyrics and also just walk us through it, if you don't mind, because it really is quite beautiful.
So I'll maybe start by sharing some lyrics, and then I'll explain sort of my thought process at the time. So I do this for my Rajas and Ranis, feel it from the Taj Mahal to the Gali. Life lessons had me stressing every heartbeat. That's until I got my blessings from the Ganges. Been through the storms and withstood the weather. Knowledge and power depicted in our books forever. Hindus, Muslims, and Sikhs from the Gurd, just imagine if we stood together. Imagine the royalty, crowned with our features, a land full of loyalty, a land full of leaders. But how do we heal us? I'll probably never understand the separation. We need a plan and some blessings for the generation. So effectively,
wow. And if anybody hasn't listened to his lyrics on his track, please go and find him on YouTube. And your YouTube channel's Premz Online, is that right?
Yeah, Premz Online.
Please listen to it. It's really touching, not only for Asians but also for non-Asians as well. Individuals who can understand that there is a resonance to a heritage or a history of some kind. And that's so beautiful. Please continue. Thank you.
So really the thought process about the song in the first place, when I was with my producers, AO Beats and Wavy Boy Smith, this was back in February. First of all, we were just talking about the similarities within Asian and African culture, because they're both Nigerian. And we were just talking about similarities with our food and, the way our home life is and the way our parents are and things like that. And then we started getting onto the similarities and some of the problems within our communities, i.e. something we see a lot of things like colorism, some, people being against each other with different religions, or casteism is another thing. And again, this is something that, we see in classism in the Western world, and, you see it absolutely everywhere. And to be honest, I just thought actually now would be a good time to write a record which talked about these things. And for me, it wasn't about, can I be the sole person that solves this problem? No, I didn't think that was going to be possible. But I wanted to be able to put out a record which didn't get too political. It was just something that you would hear and make you want to have the conversation and think, yeah, do you know what? I've never thought about something like that. And be able to, have these conversations maybe with our elders or people that maybe are still of the trade of thought from before, which is through no fault of their own. It's just something that, was brought in and breeded in. Just be able to just challenge some of these thoughts more than anything and have those conversations. And that really was the aim of the record. And touch wood, it just came out better than I thought it would have when I was initially writing it.
There's sections of it that really call to all human beings, and it's about the understanding or the principles of oneness.
Yes.
Now, you touched on it with the, I suppose you could say, interreligiousism, the religious racism, the casteism you just touched on, the colorism. I like the way you said that, the colorism. Now, I'm going to share something. I mean, this is something to do with, basically, let's just look at the South Asian continent, the communities of India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, and just look at those 4 countries, and not even touching the fact of Nepal and environments of Bhutan. But there's something that there's an understanding of divide and rule. There's an every single element of this is there's an element of, there's a gentleman called Noam Chomsky who's written a beautiful book called Who Rules the World. Now, the principle of this is what we call manufactured consent. This is a manufactured mindset, yeah, something that physically is pushing people to think in a particular way, augmented in essence the dividing of communities to an extent. And I'm going to be short with this and do apologize for taking a little bit of time. But then there's also what I call the consented influence, where if I listen to your lyrics, I can either agree or disagree with it. You touched on it earlier with sales, for example, selling, you know, taking people with the language patterning or taking them left or right, which is the other benefit and the real draw to language and lyrics. The consent, if I consent to reading something, just by reading it, I shall be influenced by it in a positive or negative, or in an agreed or disagreed environment. Yeah. And then there's also your language choice is such that you've touched on that hierarchical understanding of the yesteryear of pre-Raj, pre-British Raj.
Yeah.
And you brought it beautifully into the now and how it reacts and understands in your, what we classify as mind, your unconscious biases. You touched earlier on where you mentioned the fact that you had this inner arrogance of being different to the other Asians as well. Yeah. So that's an unconscious bias, something that we don't know. Your language is, your lyrics are brilliant. They basically are shining a torch, you said it earlier on somebody's mind in the current now. Is that what you wanted it to do?
To be honest, when I'm writing, I write with no motive. So it was just, I was just writing my thoughts and how I felt about it. And as it sort of comes together, you then see what it is. But for me, I don't write with any motive in mind at all, apart from trying to make great music. If a message happens to land upon there because I was feeling that at the time, and that's something that can be shared with people and hopefully they benefit from it, even better. But I never set out with the goal to do that, because I don't know, it's just the artistry process is so fluid that sometimes it's better to move without a plan sometimes and just make the record and see what happens. It's just because I wanted to talk about solidarity, I wanted to talk about community, but I also wanted to talk about the power in that. And those are the three things that were just in my head as I was writing the record. And I guess those are the things that I wanted to sort of come across with the song in the end.
Clearly. And it did touch, because I still feel that there's the line when you had no feeling toward the mother country, in essence, until you went there. And then the line where you touched when you bathed in the Ganges, and what happened in your world? I mean, that obviously had a significant change to your world.
Yeah, because they say that when you bathe in it, all of your sins are forgiven. Effectively, that's what they say, right? So it's if something's that powerful that can do that, it must mean something. So when that's been in your head all of that time, when you do something to that magnitude, you really feel it, because if this is something that's sort of cleansing your sins away and emptying you of that, it sort of feels like a rebirth.
I love
that's the only way I can describe it. So that's what I sort of took away from it, though I was younger at the time. That's what I took away from it and what I was feeling.
So in today, if somebody actually listens to your lyrics, right? So somebody's listening to your track, and we've already heard the lyrics. If you've missed it, please, if you just joined, just rewind back and just listen to the tightness of the lyrics and the power that's connected to the double meanings of it. If somebody listens to it today, Premz, what would you like them to understand from it? What was the action you'd like them to take? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I would like them to, first of all, recognize that community, and also recognize that there's many of us that feel it and feel that solidarity with each other as well. And also to recognize some of the things that maybe aren't correct with some of the ways of thinking within our communities, whether it would be back home or things that we've brought along to the Western world with us that may not be the right way to live, and just call it out and have the conversations and be able to healthily question something. It's not about arguing with everything. It's about being able to healthily ask a question and, you know, having a conscious, nuanced conversation about it. And then that's the only way we move forward.
I love it. The curiosity to even have the interest in something like that. And I think that's is very clearly doing that. But there's something I want to bring to there's a line of the oneness in there. And you kind of said the inter frictions, the as you said, the inter-racism that we have. I think what might be a new news is that the BAME community, let's just call it the BAME community. I don't subscribe to that, by the way, but I'm just saying, and I know we're both on that same space, but it's as a categorization, which within itself, if you utilize it, this is the consented influence side of things. If I use it, I inadvertently consent to it. So I'm making it very clear that I don't. But let's just say the Black community, even using the word Black community, and the Asian communities themselves actually have interracial issues. For example, the location of West Indians, Jamaicans, Africans in different parts of the continent of Africa, and vice versa. The same thing within the Gujarati community, where specifically where you've come from the East Africa, Idi Amin era. That also means that your ancestors were taken by the British Raj from the Indian subcontinent over to the African continent to assist with railways and knowledge of that sort of nature. So the question arises that this is such a deep solidarity, oneness, which I absolutely subscribe to, as instead of seeing the differences within human beings, but to see the similarities. Is this kind of where the flavor you want to leave in somebody's mind with intrigue?
100%. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, you summed it up perfectly. It's knowing the similarities between us. There's so many differences between all of us. Even, you know, I might like football, you may like hockey. You know, it doesn't matter, you know, whether what we enjoy different things or we believe in different things. None of that matters. There's so many similar things. We all bleed, right? We all have to breathe. That's what we need to look at, because something as silly as the color of our skin just comes down to the pigmentation, and we were born on the side of the world where it was slightly sunnier, right? That's all that thing derives from. So it's being able, but this is the thing, I say that out loud and we know it sounds silly because that is all it is, but not everybody speaks it. They never speak to it and have those conversations out loud. And just being able to just say that and realize that actually there's more similarities between all of us, because if we all trailed it all the way back, we all came from the same place. All of us did.
Yes. And it's all coming from the continent of Africa, principally where it started. Yes.
Yeah.
This is brilliant. I'm not joking. If you've joined us just now, please don't forget to subscribe and like. This is the Empower Hour with Premz, the UK Asian rap artist. So if you don't mind, this is such a deep context and concept, but I want to take the story just slightly differently and probably speak a little bit more about what your now is, if it's okay. If I could ask you, what sort of response have you had from this current release that you've just released in the commercial markets, I'm talking?
So I'll be honest with you, when I put out this song, I didn't really have an expectation, because usually the songs I release are more for the clubs, and you know what they're going to do. They're hits, they're hit records. You know what they're going to do. It was more introspective. It had more of a message. It was obviously more directed at South Asians usually than my music usually is. So I didn't really have any expectations. All I really wanted from it, to me, in my head, it was, you know, if I get even just one message of someone saying, "I'm glad you said that," and you know, that's changed something in my household, or I've had a conversation with someone, that to me would be enough. Fortunately, there's been a lot of that, which has been great to hear, that people are just having these, and like I said, you know, it's not about arguments, it's about just having a nuanced conversation and healthily questioning certain beliefs that we may have, and being able to put those things right. And that's how these things start. So yeah, the fact that that's been the response that I've been getting, I've been really happy with it, because that's really all I wanted from it at the end of the day. That, you know, if we can spark that little bit of change, you know, it becomes a reality at some point.
Yeah, even that seed of stimulation. of curiosity. Is there possibility? I mean, sometimes we're stuck in a space where we don't actually know. We don't really look backwards and we're inwards towards ourselves. We don't actually know the kind of stuff, the unconscious biases and thought processes that we pick up, and how we're going forward. And it takes strong, tight lyrics like that to actually just even get us to magnify and look back to us. It harks back, and I don't mean this in a wrong way, but I'm sharing this from a very genuine, humble heart, that it kind of reminds me a little bit about, if you remember way back, the political challenge that was around arranged marriage and how Apache Indian really stood his ground and made it very clear. But he rolled a concept of arranged marriage into a real acceptable conversation around really differentiating between arranged and forced marriages. Yes.
Yeah.
And realizing the fact that the Western world didn't know anything else but arranged marriage either. So it was a world-known thing. I mean, our royals today were arranged, and pre-war was all arranged marriage mostly. So the large families and all that sort of stuff. So the question is, I mean, how would you take it if somebody likened you to somebody who is significant, who has been, as you are, significant in creating some change in the minds of the young generation?
I would be honored, because that is all we can aspire to do. You know, as we get older and we get more experienced, all we can do is pass on knowledge and pass on the mistakes that we've made so other people don't make them. And, you know, maybe trails of thought that I may have thought 10 years ago that aren't correct. It's important to say that those things are corrected and what was wrong about those thoughts back then. So to be honest, no, that's only a good thing. That, you know, that's really all we look for, especially as artists. You know, we're not role models, but, you know, if we can use our music to put a good message across to people, even if they just take one good nugget from it, that's all we ask for. That's all we can do. And, you know, that's enough, in my opinion.
Yeah, you most definitely have done that. I just wanted to point to yourself that it definitely adds a sense of pride, a sense of awareness and identity in the language choice. So well done. And one thing is as well that, you know, I'm sure we've got plenty more of this to look forward to, and your previous releases as well. Have you got some way of our audience actually communicating with yourself, or maybe even in essence following what you're up to?
Yeah, so I'm on sort of all social medias, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. The handle's Premz Online, PremzOnline. And if you just search Premz on Apple Music, Google, Spotify, all of my catalog will be on there.
PREMZ, and then online for all your social media handles. Yeah. That's amazing. So they can find you on maybe in essence on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube, places like that.
Yes, YouTube as well. Yeah,
and Twitter, I assume.
Yeah.
A man with your intellectual capacity has to be sitting on Twitter.
Because
the Twitter really has to be one of those spaces. So I'm going to ask a deeper question, if I can. Do you ever feel that there is... Okay, so I'm going to pose it in a different way. So here, I'm going to ask you something very deep. You are a deep person. You really do think about your information, your language, and your choice. And there's no doubt that you have a detailed mindset from being a trader through to where you are right now as being an analyst. So moving forward in the context, if I was to look back at your life journey, and if we call this the legacy moment, and we say it's about the epitaph. An epitaph obviously is the end of life. And of course, as Sikhs and Hindus, there's a cremation involved there. But if you could visualize an epitaph of some kind, and if it said something like Premz, the man who, please, what would you end that sentence to be? What would that be for you? What would the one thing you'd be leaving as a legacy on this earth?
So for me, it would be to be the person that enabled others to share their inner selves and shine light on their heritages and be proud of it. Wow. Because it's not something that I got to see a lot of growing up, but I can see more of it happening now. So something along those sort of lines, I would be happy.
I suppose that's just truly amazing, and I'm very certain you're doing that. When I hear that, it leads me into understanding that there's more to you than what other people think is just a rap artist or a lyricist or somebody else. So that oneness within yourself, that be for me, I see that oneness in that. So the legacy of creating that change, of inspiring them, it sounds beautiful. If there was a conversation that you'd have with yourself, a wisdom moment, something you want to leave our audience with tonight, because I'm telling you, I don't know whether yourself, but I've thoroughly enjoyed having you here.
Likewise.
I hope you have as well. What would that wisdom stretch be for people? What thought, what quote could you give them? And I'd like to know a little bit more about why as well.
So the quote that's been etched in my brain for well over 15 years is, it derives from a Latin phrase, but it's, if I can't find a way, I'll make one. And I've always tried to develop that in my attitude, that I don't take no for an answer. I will always find a way to do something, whether there's a way out there or not. So that's something I would share with everyone, just to take that attitude that, sometimes the first road you look at isn't the way, but there will always be, even if it's a scenic route, there'll always be somewhere to take to be able to get where you need to go.
So if you can't find a way, you'll make one. So
Yeah.
How has that related to your actual journey? And in essence, when have you had to use it? Can you give us a frame?
I use it every day, if I'm honest with
Wow.
you. Because in business, as you very well know, the traditional methods of doing things are kind of played out in a lot of senses. And, we have social media and we have all of these different channels of doing things. And I've seen both at work, and I'm in an era where both still work. Even with music, I'm from a time I've had to really get used to social media and streams, because I used to literally sell CDs in people's hands on the street. I would approach people, hey, do you listen to rap music?
And those Sony MP3 units.
Yeah. So it's about adapting effectively and saying that, okay, just because something worked last year doesn't mean it's going to work today, and not accepting defeat. That, fine, if this record doesn't work, all right, we need to figure out what the audience is telling us and what do they want to hear, and what didn't I portray in myself correctly this time. Was I being true to myself? That's a question I have to ask myself a lot, because music is about being true to yourself. If you're truly being yourself, nobody can beat you in your arena, because only you can be you. Only you are the expert at that, and I truly believe that. So when you do that, you're only in competition with yourself after that. And then it comes down to authenticity. If you're being authentic, you actually can't lose, in my opinion. So you'll always come across these struggles in life where you will be challenged, where you might be trying to do a deal, and loads of headaches may prop up where, this person's saying they can't do this, and people may mess you around, or even just a normal thing, you might be trying to do your work day and the internet goes down. You now need to figure out another way of doing things. You might have to tether it off your iPhone to get your 4G onto the computer so you can continue with your day. So it's just about always having that opportunistic mind state, that you don't accept any situation as good or bad. You just accept it as it is, and how to figure it out.
It's very deep. That's like an I can do moment. It's like, if it's not there, I can still do it. Let's make it happen. Honestly, on a personal level, Premz, you have been more than a delight, an inspiration to be interviewing. And I thank you for your time, for being a part of our Empower Hour show with myself, Sukhi Wahiwala. And I hope you've thoroughly enjoyed it as well. So on behalf of myself, Salam Radio, and the Inspired Tribe, and all of our audience around the world and globe, I'd like to thank you for being on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I've enjoyed every single minute of it, honestly.
Thank you very much. And I'm not joking, seriously. You have inspired myself, amongst many others who will be following your feeds from now on. Truly, I really appreciate that a lot. And everybody else, thank you so very much for following us here today on the Empower Hour show. I hope you've enjoyed it as much as I have as well, and that you actually subscribe. And if you can, like and comment, please do share any words and any encrypted thoughts that have actually come from this YouTube live for you today. This has been episode 57 with Premz, the UK rap artist and lyricist, amongst many other things, and a great oneness human being. I'd like to see you, if I can, and inspire you to please share this video with as many people as you possibly can via our YouTube link. And please encourage as many people to get involved in our mission and our journey of inspiring other individuals through knowledge and the can-do attitude. I will see you next week, Tuesday, every Tuesday between 7 o'clock and 8 o'clock in the evening, live currently on YouTube on my Sukhi Wahiwala official channel. Up until then, thank you very much for being with us this evening, and goodbye, good night once again, and good night, Premz, once again.
Good night. Take care.
Thank you.